black font color. All right, so I want this to go back to the way that this is, the rest of the text. It appears to be Arial 14. How do I do that? Well, one way that I can to make that happen is to use the Format Painter. So this is what I'm going to do. I want you to place your cursor somewhere on top of the text that you want to copy the format. Now the format just simply means what color is the font, what size is the font, what kind of font is it? Is it bold, italic, underline? Does it have a highlighter selected on it? That's all of the formatting characteristics. So we'll just simply place our cursor on the word dear, because I want this text over here, the Citrus College address, to have the same format as this word dear. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click one time the Format Painter, and then I'll select Citrus College, let go. So now notice that Citrus College has the exact same format as the word dear, in fact for the rest of the document. But notice that I was only able to select Citrus College, and now you'll see that my insertion pointer is just a regular I-beam. See what I can do, let me click undo, so Control Z. What I can do is I can double click the Format Painter to keep it alive. So here's what I'll do. I'll place the cursor rack over here on top of the font that I want to copy, or the formatting I want to copy. And instead of single clicking, I'm going to double click. Alright, so I double click and I can select Citrus College. Let go. See how the Format Painter is still alive? And then I select the address. Once again, see how the Format Painter is still alive? Then I select Glendora, California in the zip. And again, notice that the Format Painter is still alive. If I don't want this anymore, I can press Escape on my keyboard, or I can click the Format Painter. And now you can see this is just a regular insertion point. Okay, let me press Enter over here. Alright, so that's a little bit about how the Format Painter works. By the way, copy, cut, paste. I shared with you those keyboard shortcuts. If I selected Citrus College, I could copy that. I could cut it. I could paste it. Right, so all those options are over here in the clipboard group. Alright, I want you to double click Citrus College, select these two, and let's talk a little bit about this guy. This one's really cool. This option allows you to change some text effects. So if I click over here, you'll notice that I have all these different options, and as I hover on top of them, it's giving you a live preview. Well, since this is citrus, that's orange, so I'll select this guy over here. Click it, and now notice the change. So it just gives you that really nice graphical appearance. It's called the Text Effects button. Alright, I can change that also, so let me select these two, click over here, and I can also change the outline. So maybe I want a black outline or a white outline. See how the change is reflected over here? Or maybe I want a shadow for this text. So again, as I hover on top of these text, you'll see these text options, that is. You'll see that it's being previewed over here, so you can select whichever one you want. Reflection, right? Again, that gives kind of like the reflection on the bottom here, and different types of reflections as you see me selecting these various items. And then finally we have glow. So I can select, or either I'm just simply hovering on top of these various glow options. They have different colors and different sizes of the glow. I think I'm just going to stick with this guy right here. That's fine. So I click that, unselect over here. That looks good. We'll just leave that as is. Actually, you know, maybe I should change the font size a little bit. Double click, select these two. Let me increase the size of the font. Yeah, that looks better. Okay, so now you know how to use all of these various options over here. Let's talk about the paragraph group, specifically when it comes to the way that you align text. All right, let's say that I wanted Citrus College to be center aligned. Well, I could select this guy over here. Or I could select left align, which that's the way it was by default. Or I could select right align. So you see what these first three alignment tools do. They allow you to align the text left, center, or right. Let me return back to left. Now what about this guy over here, justify? Well, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to select my first paragraph, as you can see over here. And then when I select justify, notice what happens at the end over here. So let me click justify, and notice that it adds a little bit of space. So let me click it, and click it again, click it again. See how it's adding spaces? It's adding little teeny tiny spaces to make sure that the left and the right side are both justified. So if you want this type of appearance, which is typical in newspapers or magazine articles where you have columns of text, then you probably want justify. In this case, I'm just simply going to return back to left align. All right, what if I wanted to change the spacing of my text? Now, I just simply type the text and it automatically word wrap to the next line, but I don't like the single spacing. Well, that's this button over here. So again, select the text that you want to change the spacing, or just simply place your cursor in front of the paragraph that you want to change. Click this guy over here, line spacing. Well, you'll see that by default 1.15 is selected, but I could change this to 1 to 2 for double spacing, for 3 to triple spacing. I think I'll just leave it at 2. So again, now I've changed the line spacing to double spacing. All right. Let's talk a little bit about these buttons over here. So these are bullets. I'm going to click over here at the end of this particular sentence, hit enter, and let's see here. I'm going to type CSIS 105, enter. Actually, before I do that, let me just simply type in CSIS 105, and then click the symbolic bullet right here. So when I click bullets, notice what it does. It puts a little solid dot in front of the text. Now I'm going to press enter and then type CSIS 107, CSIS 111, so forth and so on. Let me put a space over here in front of CSIS 105 here. All right, so what this does is it places a symbolic bullet in front of the text. Now, if you don't like this symbolic bullet, there are others that you can select. So let me select from the top, or actually from the bottom up, or I can select from the top down. And then I can select the drop down to choose one of these symbolic bullets. So perhaps I want this hollow circle, or maybe I want the square. I think I'm going to settle for the check mark. So I click the check mark and notice what happens. Now my symbolic bullet is a check mark. But I'm not locked into the symbolic bullet. Perhaps you want a numeric bullet. Well, that's this option over here. So if I click the numeric bullet, again, now notice that you have numbers followed by periods indicating the different items here, but I don't have to have this. If I click the drop down, I can select numbers with parentheses or Roman numerals or capital letters, lowercase letters. So you have all kinds of different options over here. Let's say that I select the letters, the capital letters. So there you go. You've changed this into a numeric list as opposed to a symbolic list. Now, if you really want to get crazy, you can select this guy over here, the multi-level list. What the multi-level list does is it gives you the opportunity to have whatever your point is, then subpoints and sub-subpoints and sub-sub-subpoints. And you can have them listed as numbers followed by letters, or numbers with sub-numbers and sub-sub-numbers, or you can have symbolic bullets. So these are the multi-level list options. I think I'm just going to go ahead and leave this as a symbolic bullet. So I'm going to click this guy again. Check marks, that's okay with me. Okay, let's talk about these two buttons over here. So this one says decrease indent. This one says increase indent. Well, see, if I place my cursor in front of the word I, and if I press tab on the keyboard, notice what happens. This thing automatically tabs. Now, you may not see the ruler. If you don't see the ruler, click view, and then place a check mark right here where it says ruler. So click the view tab, select ruler, and then go back to the home tab. Now you'll see this ruler, and you'll notice in this gray section, you see this little tiny line here, these little tick marks. Those are called tab stops. So when I hit, let me scroll over here. When I hit tab, it stops here. When I hit tab, it stops here. Tab again, stops here, so forth and so on. These are tab stops. So let me hit Control Z several times to undo. All right, so that's what tab does, but I don't need those items. I can use this over here. I can use increase indent, increase again, increase again. So as I click increase indent, you can see what's happening to the paragraph. Or I could click this guy over here for decrease indent. And I'm going to go back all the way to the 0 point of the ruler. Okay, so that's one way of indenting. Let me show you another. It involves these little tiny triangles. This upside triangle is called first line indent. This right side up triangle is called hanging indent. This rectangle is called left indent. And then finally you have this little rectangle, or this little triangle over here called the right indent. Let's see what happens when I take this little tiny triangle, first line indent. I'm going to click and drag it to the 1-inch mark. Notice that just the first line, see that's why this is called a first line indent. Just the first line was indented, everything else is not. Okay, so let me take this guy and drag it back to the 0 mark of the ruler. Now I'm going to hover on top of this button over here called the hanging indent, and I'll drag that to the 1-inch mark. Well, notice that it drags that and also the little tiny rectangle. Notice that just the first line is not indented, and the rest of the text is in fact indented. Watch what happens when I type some dummy text here. So as I type some text, doesn't it look like this first line is hanging? That's why they call this a hanging indent. So let me get rid of the dummy text here, hit delete, and I'm going to take this and return that back to the 0 mark. Okay, so now you know what the hanging indent does. Let me place my cursor again in front of the paragraph and drag this button over here called the left indent to the 1-inch mark. Notice that everything is indented. And that's exactly what this thing does, but only from the right perspective. The right indent, if I click this and if I drag it over here to the 5-inch mark, you can see what happens. The right side is indented all the way to the 5-inch mark. Let me take this thing and drag it back over here to the 6.5-inch mark. I'm going to take this little left indent button, drag that back to the 0 mark, and there we go. Okay, so let's say that this is enough for this particular lecture. We'll talk about some of the other stuff later on, but I need to save my document. Well, to save, you should click the File tab, and then click Save As. So when you click Save As, it by default takes you into the Documents folder. That's okay. Notice that it already gives you a preview name, since those were the first 2 words that I typed over here, Citrus College. It's going to give you those as a possible way of naming this document. I think I'm going to get rid of all this text, delete, and say letter to Professor Robert Solis. You have the opportunity to type 255 characters. Now I wouldn't go crazy with that. Just simply keep it as small as possible. Letters to Professor Robert Solis is okay. Notice that you don't have the .docx here. You can type the the extension if you want to, but I wouldn't. Let me get rid of that. It's not necessary to type the extension because you already have the extension that's going to be tagged to the file. This already says save as type. Well, it's going to save it as a document. But notice I can save this thing as a PDF. I can save this thing as a web page. There's all kinds of additional options that I have over here. I think I'm just going to leave it as a Word document. It's going to save it in the Documents folder, so I just simply click Save. Okay, so over here on the top of the document, now you see that it says letters to Professor Robert Solis.docx. Perfect. Let's print this thing. Well, once again, you'll click the File menu option, and then you'll have Print. So over here, it gives you a preview of what the document looks like, how many copies do you want, and what printer do you want to select. And then you just simply hit Print. Now, I don't want to print, so I'm just simply going to go back over here to File and return back to this screen. All right, so that is a very general introduction of how to use Microsoft Word. We're going to be creating some more video lessons to go into more depth. So save this document because we're going to take off from here in our next video lesson. So this is Professor Robert Solis. I hope this video lesson was helpful. Have a good day. We'll see you next time.